If I were to ask you to visualize or to think about a campfire, what would come to mind? Would it be a picture? Or would it be the smell of smoke? Maybe s'mores cooking on the campfire? Would it be the feel of the warmth on your legs? We call things visual aids, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, but visual is kind of a misnomer because the aids we use when we're speaking can be a lot more than visual. We saw that when Kim came in with her wool and we all got to touch it and play with it. We're a lot more. So one of my aids today is, the way we're situated, it's hard to share with you, is oranges. But if I were to open up this orange and you could smell, it's Joe's Produce, they're not that fragrant today, but if you could smell the orange, what would it make you want to drink? Orange juice? How would it make you feel about a glass of milk? And just as our olfactory sense prepares our brain for what we're about to taste, the visual aids that we as speakers use prepare our listeners to digest the information we're about to give them. It prepares their brains. So it lets us, as speakers, manage their expectations, give them something to anticipate. When we use them correctly, our visual aids engage our listeners. They put their ears up, so to speak. If they were puppy dogs, they would be like when used correctly. And that's why we all know it's such a delicate balance between too little information and too much information. Too little information and our listeners can't figure out where we're going. Too much information and they're focusing on their handouts, on the bullet points, on our PowerPoints, and not listening to what we have to say. One book that I found very, very helpful is not at all for Toastmasters. It's called Talk Like TED, the 9 public speaking secrets of the world's great minds. And it's by Carmine Gallo. And I'm not about to reveal all 9 points. I recommend the book, but I will reveal the first point. It's all about storytelling. And Mr. Gallo points out that the brain research that's been done in the last 10 years is particularly applicable to speakers and other communicators because a lot of it involves functional MRIs, and that's where they can see what areas of the brain light up during different events. And one easy thing to test is what the brain does in response to speech. And they've actually found when brains, well, people that have brains, are listening to stories, they're much more engaged, like the brain is lit up more than when it's just listening to facts or listening to other things. So our stories help engage people. And what we often ignore is the fact that our visual aids or other aids are part of that process of storytelling. We all hear about our hook, but we tend to think of it as being purely verbal and coming at the beginning of a speech. In my opinion, through visual or other aids, we can make that hook embed a little deeper, and it can keep people hooked throughout our speech because it engages them in what we have to say. It helps us tell our story. So a visual aid can help people understand our story, anticipate our story, and stay with it. One of the examples that Talk Like TED gives is of a neuroanatomosis a neuro and anatomy doctor, because I can't say the actual name of what she is. And her name is Dr. Jill Taylor. And she's the first one who gave a TED Talk that went viral on the internet and got over 10 million views. And her visual aid was disgusting. It is a human brain with 17 inches of spinal cord attached. According to reviews of this, when she pulls it, gloves up and pulls out her brain, there's sounds of disgust. Her visual aid is not at all appealing, but it's visceral. It gets people emotionally. They feel it. And in addition to talking to adults, she talks to teens. And it is particularly impactful for teens when she holds that brain up. I looked at home, I didn't have one to bring. Apparently they're all in use, all appearances to the contrary. But she holds up that kind of disgusting brain with that spinal cord, and she says to the youth, this is your brain. This is your instrument. This is your power. So the visual aid is not merely visual. So in peroration, we've talked about 4 major attributes of good visual aids. The first is that they help manage listeners' expectations, increase anticipation, and help them know what's going to come. Good visual or other aids engage listeners and keep them engaged. And of course, as we have known forever, they help listeners understand our content. And finally, they're not always visual. They apply as much to the other 4 senses and to emotions and visceral effects as they do to sight. So, fellow Toastmasters, what's your next visual, oral, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, emotional aid going to be? How is it going to help you tell your story and share your content? Here's Madam Toastmaster.